Okay. Is mixed dancing actually forbidden? Is it a minhag? Is it allowed to attend a mixed party and not dance? This is from Queens. That's a good question. I don't know why you're asking about dancing per se. I mean, there are much more minor things that are prohibited, right, than that. Uh, it's a very big problem. It's a very big problem. I mean, I'll read you what the halacha is, how Rambam posek, Maran Shulchan Aruch posek the same thing. He writes in Perek Kaf Aleph Hilchot Isurei Bi'ah the following. He says, yeah. Asur le'adam likrot biyadav u'braglav, right? It's prohibited for a person to motion either with his hand or his legs, or his arms or his legs, or lirmoz be'enav, or even to hint with his eyes, la'ahat min ha'arayot, to any woman that is an arva to him, right? What does that mean? No flirtation whatsoever, right? No indications whatsoever of any kind of overtures that are, provocative in nature, even in the slightest degree, to a woman who is an arva to him. V'chen l'sahek, and certainly to laugh with her, or lehakel rosh, or to act frivolously, right, with her, right, not to treat the situation seriously, being that this is a dangerous situation. Afilu lehariach besamim she'aleha, you're not allowed to even intentionally smell her perfume for the intention of getting satisfaction from that in any sexual way. Or lehabit beyofia, you're not even allowed to look at her beauty with the intent to enjoy her beauty. Umakin amitkaven devar ze makad mardud. In the good old days, we would whip somebody for doing this if we were able to see that they did and found that they were. Okay. Now, I mean, dancing isn't the problem. It's all of this other stuff which comes before, right? So there's no question about the fact that dancing is absolutely a problem, but so is all of this other stuff, right? You can't kiss a woman hello. I mean, it's something that I think is profoundly intriguing in Western society. Not only Western stuff, but certainly in Western society, where people just feel that a woman can be kissed. I don't mean kissed, on the mouth, kissed on the cheek. Men will shake hands and then kiss a woman as a greeting. Why is that permitted? When did that become okay? Yeah, as a matter of fact, I will never forget this. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and she was, I think was it John Boehner who was before her? I think he was the speaker before her, and he was handing over the gavel to her. And he shook everyone's hand and then went over to kiss Nancy Pelosi. And she was even interested. She was going to shake his hand. He kissed Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, right? So these things are absolutely unacceptable and prohibited. That's the halakha, right? The fact that Western society no longer recognizes this, doesn't recognize this as a thing at all anymore today is, it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. I mean, forget about these things. I mean, the entirety of Western civilization is completely and utterly entrenched in sex, right? There's nothing that you can do to get away from it. So as far as the halacha is concerned, yes, it's prohibited. There's no question about that. There's a difference, which I'm not going to get into, between a woman who's an arva and a woman who's not an arva to you. But even with regards to that, there is prohibitions about behaving this way in general with women because you don't know whether she's an arva or not, to be honest, right? In most cases, right? And even if you do know that she's not an arva, Harambam writes, "Midarket siniut veperisha," right? You just don't expose yourself to these kinds of things because you are, the reality is that it gets you into trouble. So there's all kinds of people that get upset with this and argue with this and so on and so forth. I am not suggesting that men and women should not interact, right? I mean, people need to be able to know how to be in society. There's no prohibition just to look at a woman. The looking that's problematic is that Harambam wrote over there is the looking for the sake of gratification sexually, right? For those purposes, that's what's prohibited. And okay, so that's what's prohibited. It's not asur to look a woman in the eye when you talk to her and about, what's going on in the world or whatever the case may be. That's not prohibited. So the people that, block women's pictures out of, every possible photo, that's a bit absurd, right? And that's not something that was done by even the greatest of Hachamim in the beginning of the 20th century. Nobody did that. It's only modern people who crazily do things like that. But as far as dancing is concerned, all these other things are also problematic and prohibited. So it's something that needs to be avoided. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to the wedding, or I'm saying a wedding because that's where it usually happens, right? But I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to these parties, but it's best to leave the room when that is going on, right? It's not good to be present in those places. Certainly not to sit and watch it, right? If it's hard for you to leave it, then you mind your own business and look at other things. But it's the equivalent of kind of being involved and looking at somebody doing something that's asur, and here specifically the looking is involved in the isur. That's best really not to participate in. So when I find myself in those situations, I tend to leave the room when that's going on. Oftentimes I don't stay when that starts. I leave at the time that starts. But if for whatever reason I can't leave, I leave the room during that period of time. But it's not something that, and it's not because I'm uber mahmir on anything or whatever the case may be. It's asur, right? So that's that.